Well, good morning. I'd like to call this meeting of the House and Labor Industry Committee to order. Jonathan, please take the roll.
Dawkins,
Here.
Brennan, Donahue, Gerald, Green, Haddock, Kincaid,
Here by designation.
Krajewski,
Here by designation.
Mirsky,
Here by designation.
Miller,
Here by designation.
O'Mara, Scott,
Here by designation.
Siegel,
Here by designation.
Young, Grove,
Here.
Anderson, Barger, Bernstein,
Here designation.
Cooper,
Here designation.
Diorsi,
Here.
Ecker,
Here designation.
Fink,
Here.
Gleim,
Here.
Jones,
Here designation.
Reichard, Rossi.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. First on today's agenda, I would like to call up House Bill 569, printers number 573, sponsored by Representative Ham. I have a motion by Representative Rossi and second by Representative Barber. Thank you. Andrew, please explain the bill.
House Bill 569 amends Act 101 of 1976, known as the Emergency and Law Enforcement Personnel Death Benefits Act, to provide a death benefit to coroners and deputy coroners.
Thank you. I will now like to recognize the prime sponsor of House Bill 569, Representative Hand, to offer brief remarks on his legislation.
Well, thank you, Chairman Dawkins, Chairman Grove, and members of the Labor and Industry Committee. I thank you for the opportunity to bring House Bill 569 to you and ask for your consideration on this legislation. It's a simple piece of legislation. It provides line-of-duty death benefits to our county coroners, our deputy coroners, and our medical examiners. Currently, those same individuals can be out on a scene, such as one that I was on as a captain in the fire department, a fatal vehicle accident on the highway. And as I was working with our county coroner to remove that body from the vehicle, we had traffic moving in a lane adjacent to us. Now, luckily everything went smoothly on that call, and we were able to remove the body and get the scene cleared. But what would have happened that day if somebody was on their phone, if they were not paying attention, and would have hit me and our county coroner at the same time, and we were both killed in that scene, my family would have received a death benefit because I was a captain in the fire department. Our county coroner's family would have received nothing. And so this is legislation that I believe is long overdue, legislation that I think is common sense, and I sincerely ask for your approval of it today. Thank you.
Thank you. And on the bill, is there any discussion? Representative Gleim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out also that I think during COVID, we saw some firsthand, incidents where our coroners had to be dealing with, victims or people that had died of COVID. And I think that showed, a lot of us, the EMS side of this and how they're exposed to, dangerous viruses and things like that. I also have a son who works with the coroner in New York City, and so I can see that side of the danger of that particular position. So I'm going to be supporting this bill. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Brennan.
Yeah, and
Hit your mic. Turn it on. Sorry.
yeah, I'm very happy to see this bill coming before us. I see some of the work that our coroners do as a solicitor for counties. I was really lucky to work with some of our coroners. I see how they work hand in hand with law enforcement. I see one of them right here in our crowd today, a coroner that I worked with. So I mean, our coroners are exposed to so many different things. They're in the line of harm. So I'm glad that we're here today taking a step to protect these public servants. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm supportive of this bill. I have talked to coroners in my district. They are in favor. They do serve shoulder to shoulder alongside other first responders, fire, EMS, police. These scenes are often unpleasant, to say the least, and dangerous. I do think asking them to perform their duty, doing things that most of us wouldn't want to do in environments where most of us wouldn't be. So I would support it, and I'd ask my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I now recognize my co-chair, Representative Grove.
Yeah, appreciate Chairman bringing up this bill. Good bill. Hi to the coroners in here, because if you don't say hi to coroners and you're in the same room with them, it's probably not a good thing. So I always love saying hi to my coroner and her deputies, because it makes me feel so much more alive. So look forward to voting. I don't think we have any negative votes on our side. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, thank you very much. And again, I would urge all the members to support this bill. I want to thank the gentleman for bringing it up, and we look forward to advancing it throughout the process to get it to the governor's desk. So with that, Jonathan, we're going to take the roll. Hearing no negative votes, we report House Bill 569 is reported as committed from the House and Labor Industry Committee. Congratulations, sir. I would like to now call up House Bill 630, printer's number 767, sponsored by Representative Schusterman. Is there a motion to consider the bill? Representative Brennan, second by Representative Young. Thank you. And Ryan, please explain the bill.
House Bill 630, printer's number 767, would modernize the equal pay law to extend wage discrimination protections to individuals on the basis of race and ethnicity. It also includes provisions related to pay transparency and protections for employees from retaliation for exercising their rights under the Act. Finally, the bill increases penalties for violations of the Act.
Thank you very much. I would like to recognize the prompt sponsor, who's not here right now, but I'm going to give it to our co-sponsor, Representative O'Mara, to make some brief remarks on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For those of you who don't know, today is actually Equal Pay Day in 2025, which is the day that it takes for women to earn the same amount as male counterparts earned in the year 2024. It's March 25th. Pretty late into the year 2025, and that's only for white women. Equal Pay Day is later in the year for women of color, and I don't know the dates off the top of my head, but it's like August and September. Anyway, it's a long time coming that we address equal pay. And I know we've ran this bill out of this committee before, and some of our colleagues argued that we don't need this, that women already receive equal pay, but the data does not lie. A woman, a mom, earns $10,000 less than a dad does when working in the year. As someone raised by a single mom, I could not imagine what that $10,000 could have done for our family. Our bill also addresses the ability for employers to use prior pay when determining the rate of new pay for a new hire. And women often find themselves in a position where they're not negotiating or they were underpaid in a prior job. So they're going to be then penalized if that employer is looking at what they used to make. The reality is that women earn about 80 cents to the dollar for men, and it is time that we address this inequity. So I want to thank the chairman on his birthday and on Equal Pay Day for calling this bill forward for a vote. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. On the bill, recognize Chairman Grove and see what else.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, when I took over appropriations last year, our executive director retired. I hired the first female executive director for the House Republican Caucus. My management team was actually majority female. Systematically, since I left, they were all fired, but we at least took care of it and made sure that we promoted. And we took a look at pay disparity among the committee as well. That talent level is very hard to find. So we looked at pay scales, men, women, didn't matter. We equalized them to make sure we keep our talent within the committee structure. You know, when I talked to my wife about this, I know for a fact that she negotiated lower salary for more time off. So statistically, she makes less than her male counterparts, but at the same time, she has more paid leave. And when you add that all up together, it actually puts them all on the same pay scale when you add all that together. So there's a lot of reasons within our society that people make more than others. We've had a federal equal pay law. We have an equal pay law at the state level. I think Representative Gleim has mentioned before that that needs adjusted, but not to the extent of this. We just continually have issues with bills going in front of our committee that add more regulatory regime to businesses, more costs, more compliance issues. And when you give that to a department to oversee, it becomes very hard to work within that system. Like I've said before, we're always open to negotiation and working through this. I just think there's another bill probably going to the Senate that's not going to move forward. But we're always open to try to help. Obviously, if we get a good House Republican stamp on issues, hopefully we can move it through the Senate, as well makes it easier to do that, where you're not negotiating large stuff, you're on the detail level. But we're more than happy to help. We'll be a no today, but we'll see as this process moves forward where we can work together to get to yes on some of these things. So, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Yep, Representative Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate it. If you could give me a little leeway here, I'll try to speak on this bill and not repeat the same speech, which would apply to a number of bills we've run and probably will run. Mr. Chairman, I'm not on the Agriculture Committee, but on occasion I've thought how comical it would be if I were. Not so much being on the committee. I have as much right as anyone to be there and as much right to speak up as anyone else. But more so if I went in there with a lack of humility and started espousing my ideas as to how farmers should fertilize their land, plant their fields, and harvest their crops. Not only espousing, but dictating to them, because I know best about farming. Where it gets comical is when someone says to me, well, Mike, isn't it true that you grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment? And I say, well, yeah, that is true. Then they ask, well, were your parents farmers? And I say, well, I know they weren't. Then they ask, have you ever driven a combine, a planter, maybe just a tractor, anything bigger than a lawnmower? And I say, well, actually, I have not. Finally, they ask, well, Mike, have you owned a pair of overalls, maybe just picked an ear of corn? And I say, nope, but I do know how to farm better than any of these farmers in the state, and I'm going to tell them how they should do it. I looked at everyone's bio yesterday on the other side of the aisle, and as best I can tell, of the 14 Democrat members, only 2 have ever owned a business. Couldn't find out what they were, but apparently small businesses, many of which would be too small to be impacted by much of the legislation we're pushing through this committee. Only 1 other had a significant career in the private sector. That leaves 11 who have never owned a business, never led a business, and most of whom have never even worked for a private sector business, predominantly government jobs, nonprofit, and the like. And there's nothing at all wrong with that. Doesn't make them bad people, doesn't make them dumb people. I have little doubt that many on this committee are smarter than I am, more educated than I am, and sadly, looking at all that white hair on my head that was up on the monitor during our last meeting, are definitely younger, and every one of you is much better looking than I am. But it does mean that much like me telling farmers how to farm, you might not be all that qualified to tell businesses how to operate a business. When I was looking through the bios, I noticed that 2 or 3 of our Democrat members are volunteer firefighters. Thank you very much for that. So I doubt you would appreciate a guy like myself who's never walked into a burning building preaching to you about best practices on how to fight a fire. And the fact that I might pound the desk or talk extra loud wouldn't make what I was saying one bit more credible, because here's the reality of this bill, whether you want to believe it or not. For the very few injustices that this bill might create, it will create 100 times more injustices. I did the math last night, and I signed the front of approximately 60,000 paychecks in my career as president of a 100-plus person firm. I consulted across the country and around the world for many of the largest and most successful companies in the world. If you want to know, if you're interested in truth rather than sound bites, what actually happens with these laws is they protect only the worst performer and they reward mediocrity. The good employees, male or female, red and yellow, black and white, and I know because I hired all of them and I loved all of them, don't need the state's protection. They chart their own course, control their own destiny, and if any business is foolish enough not to hire them or fairly compensate them, they won't be in business long, because those employees will leave and companies like the one I used to lead will hire them. Fortunately, the vast majority of businesses aren't foolish enough to do that. During more than my 25 years in the private sector, I didn't see one legitimate case of discrimination. And I will qualify, my world was the white-collar world. Maybe some of you have a different perspective, as I learned last session. Maybe there's different industries, different sectors, but that's what I experienced. I did, however, see firsthand, typically secondhand, one employer after another falsely accused of discrimination, when in fact the accuser was simply a poor fit or a bad employee. That's reality. We can't afford to keep persecuting unnecessarily and unfairly our job creators and our taxpayers. As I said the other day, I'll continue to say it, we're getting older, smaller, and poorer by the day, and our seniors and others are going to pay the price as we chase young people out of the state, because that's where the employers go and they follow the jobs. This is not only unnecessary, this is a terrible bill that I obviously strongly oppose. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Representative Gleim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do agree with my colleague, but I do want to report that the Department of Labor and Industry has reported that there hasn't been a single equal pay complaint filed with the Bureau in over 20 years. And they say that it's due to the protections provided through the Fair Labor Standards Act. Federal and state law already prohibit discrimination in all areas of employment on the basis of race, sex, color, and national origin, and other protected classes. And the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission is already tasked with investigating violations. I think that this legislation is overly broad, it's unneeded, and I'll be a no today in committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I understand this piece of legislation, is equal pay for equal work. It's really that simple, equal pay for equal work. So if there is someone performing a responsibility that they agree to when they sign a contract for employment, they should be paid equally. I think it's important to keep on track with what this bill actually is talking about. It's interesting that my colleagues are talking about thank you for doing your research. I appreciate that, because although not everybody has a business, we all have lived experiences. And so from one of my colleagues from Delaware County who mentioned that she watched the struggle, and if we are here in this government right now in 2025 with so much noise happening in our country, we should be able to, and we should be willing and wanting to support the families, starting with the matriarchs of those families. Women are people too, and I don't think that their pay should be discriminate. They should not have discrimination based on their gender, definitely not their race. I do have letters behind my name, and I am pretty qualified to be not only here, but a lot of different places. But I do realize that it doesn't matter. If women are not paid fairly, then why should anybody go to school, right? So we're all there. We all have a journey. We all have goals. And so why are we in this chamber right now in this committee talking about how to justify the earnings for equal work? I'm a little baffled by that, but I will say this is not ridiculous legislation. I think it's great legislation coming from a woman, and I don't think that I think it's important for us to realize that if we're here to represent people, let's start with representing people so they can take care of their household and stop trying to quantify their existence and their expertise. So I am a yes.
Thank you. Representative Kincaid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I actually am on the Agriculture Committee. I have never farmed either, but I raised my hand and I requested to be assigned to the Agriculture Committee because I believe that it is our responsibility as legislators to learn, to put ourselves in a position where we are educating ourselves about what we don't know. So my background as a lawyer, my background working on policy is different from a lot of my colleagues, but it doesn't invalidate the information that I have learned as a legislator from people who are experts. And it's the idea that somehow because you do not have the specific and identical experience that you cannot possibly understand what good policy is in order to actually be able to make decisions. In that capacity, a vast majority of our colleagues should just refrain from ever casting a vote because they don't have direct, specific experience prior to their legislative experience. But we have people who educate us, who are subject matter experts on this stuff, because there is no way that any one individual in this body can be a subject matter expert on everything. So we put together best practices and we rely on the people who know better than we do in order to craft legislation. And the simple fact of the matter is that it is easy to say that something doesn't exist when people are not allowed to talk about it, when they're not allowed to share their experiences, when they are not allowed to discuss their wages and compare. When retaliation happens, when those discussions happen. And that's what this bill also does, is it protects people's ability to share information. It was not that long ago that at the federal level that we passed the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, because Lilly Ledbetter realized that for the entirety of her career, she was underpaid drastically, dramatically, as compared to the men who were doing the exact same job that she was doing. And the reason that she didn't know that she was being underpaid was because she wasn't allowed to talk about her pay. And we had to pass legislation to allow people to have a cause of action to be able to hold people accountable for that kind of action. But we don't have those protections at the state level to say that you are not allowed to be retaliated against for merely discussing what your wages and benefits are. And it's great when people are able to actually negotiate and say, you know what, I will take a lower pay because I want different benefits. But not everybody is in that position to have that conversation with an employer. Not everybody has the ability or the experience to be able to engage in sophisticated negotiations, and they should be compensated fairly as well. So we are merely giving employees the ability to protect themselves and their income and be treated fairly. That's it. And if this never happens and nobody ever has to actually utilize this, then great. But the reality is every single woman, whether or not you recognize it, has experienced this. Every person of color has experienced it. And it's not right and it's not fair, and that is not how business should run. And I am not going to apologize for holding businesses accountable for unfairly treating paying and treating their employees. If this puts a burden on your business, then the reality is that you are not behaving in a fair and just manner when you are paying your employees. Do a better job at your job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Rossi.
I would just like to comment that employees have the right to should have the right to hire based on experience and skill and what the negotiation is at the hire. Employers should have the right to decide pay, and the employees can work up to whatever level they strive for. how many times do we hire an employee and what they say at the interview isn't really how they perform or really what we experience? And so as an employer, I want the right to really reward that employee that's doing a great job and get them up to the level they want to be. And so I will be a no on this bill.
Thank you. Representative Haddock.
I didn't know we'd talk about farms so much in labor and industry, but ironically, I own one. I'm a part owner. But in my resume, I do not call myself a farmer. I am one of the two probably that does have that I'm a small businessman. And I'm also a banker, 25 years in banker. So I've worked with businesses, and I understand that part of the financial piece. But what bothers me is when somebody says an elected official, in this case a state representative, that's sitting on a committee isn't qualified. I would point everybody in this room to the Pennsylvania Constitution that says we are elected to serve our district. Up to 65,000 people, elected people, and put the faith. And our forefathers in the Constitution gave us the god darn right to vote on matters in this state. And nobody should be called unqualified to bring up legislation. That's wrong. So I'll stand with women because studies show that women doing the same job are underpaid compared to their male counterpart. And I am gladly supporting this bill.
Thank you. Representative O'Mara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't even planning to speak once today, so I apologize that I'm speaking again, but I do feel it important to at least correct the record that in the year 2024, and I don't want to call anyone out, so I won't, 4 major cases of equal pay and discrimination were paid out. One by a major university in our state, one by a school district in the southeast region of the state, and 2 by home health care companies that are based in Pennsylvania. It also was mentioned, we are here to represent residents in Pennsylvania, and of course everyone's perspective is different. As women in this state, of a state of which there are 6.5 million women, more women than men, our perspective cannot be denied because your experience wasn't the same as ours. The fact of the matter is the data has shown, our life experiences have shown and taught us that women are not paid the same as men in the workforce. And there are a variety of reasons why that happens, some of which is because of the jobs that women tend to take, which is something we're not going to be able to address in this legislation, but there are things that we can do to address the reality of equal pay. Since our bios were brought up, I feel important to mention I'm a Pennsylvania resident who has been continuously impacted by the lack of policies that support Pennsylvania residents. My dad was a firefighter who died by suicide 30 minutes after returning home from a shift in the state. You know what he didn't get? Line of duty death benefits. Because in this state, back then, and still to this day, we don't cover line of duty death benefits for suicide, even when it's on duty. My mom then became a single mom of 3 with an education from a Pennsylvania public school, unable to get a job that provided her with enough wages and benefits to support our family. So do you know who entered the workforce at 13? Me. What my bio doesn't tell you is that I have worked at churches, swim clubs, pizza shops that I helped start up, restaurants, childcare camps, cleaning companies. I, in fact, did run my own small business when I ran my own cleaning company. That isn't on my bio, but it is a reason that I am here today and that voters wanted a person with a working class background to come into this building, which often forgets working class people, to fight for them. When I graduated from college, Westchester University, a state school that I paid for myself to go to, worked 3 jobs while I was attending it, and had a massive amount of student loans to do so, I graduated as a teacher in the year 2011, Guess what? This state drastically cut public education funding. So back then, I couldn't get a job. So I ended up going to work for a nonprofit in a university, and I had a great career in that sector. That doesn't make me not qualified because it wasn't in the private sector. That gives me a different perspective to come here and work for the people of Pennsylvania. So please, do not act like any of us didn't earn this seat. We did. And the only qualification, as mentioned by the prior speaker, that we have for this job is our age and our residency. But our life experiences are what teach us what is important to the people in this state. And so I continue to remind you today, March 25th, is the day that women earn the same amount as men did in the year 2024. You can't deny that. You can maybe make yourself feel better by giving yourself ridiculous reasons to vote no. But the fact of the matter is women deserve this, and I will always fight for the women and all the people of Pennsylvania. Bottom line, this is good for our economy. It's going to boost salaries. It's going to help families. If you're pro-family, you should always be for equal pay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I now recognize my co-chair, Chairman Grove.
I don't think I really have anything to add. I think the comments were I'll put it this way. This committee last session had some viral videos. A lot of personal attacks and stuff like that. We were good up until this point. I think we should all focus on the policy in front of us. A lot of, unfortunately, comments got off on the wrong tangent, but I will definitely talk to my members about that to make sure we stay focused on the policy itself. We're all duly elected. We represent our constituents, and we can get on to the vote, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you. I would like to first just thank the sponsor of the legislation and the co-sponsor for taking the lead on such an important piece of legislation. But it would be remiss if I didn't bring up a few things we did here. Because we have to make a decision here in this committee. Because on one hand, we hear we should allow businesses to have the right to operate the way they see fit. But in that same spirit, we have policy that we advocate for that limits a business to measure success through their diversity. So either we allow businesses the freedom to operate, to hire who they want, to include who they want in their diversity plans, or we don't. But we can't have it both ways. It is either freedom or not. And secondly, to the good gentleman from York's point, when we talk about who is qualified, we have to keep that same energy when we talk about women's health. Because last I checked, there was plenty of men who never gave birth that had a lot to say about a woman's reproduction in this building. So you have to call a strike when there's a strike and call foul when there's a foul. I do agree with my co-chair. We are going to elevate the conversation. We are not going to stoop to any personal shots at one another. That does nothing for our country, but we have to keep it fair. And what we're talking about today is fairness when it comes to equal pay. There's no denying the data. You know, we can have our own lived experiences and anecdotes of what we believe, but the numbers bear out the truth. There is a disconnect, and we can have many reasons why women may be paid less, and it could be around negotiation, it could be around market standards, it could be a ton of factors and variables. But to sit here and deny that it exists is where it becomes problematic. We can have our different approaches of how we get there, but we cannot deny the reality. So with that, Jonathan, I'm gonna ask you to take the roll.
Dawkins?
Yes.
Brennan? Yes. Donahue? Yes. Gerald? Yes. Green? Yes. Haddock? Yes. Kincaid? Yes. Krajewski?
Yes, designation.
Mursky? Yes. Miller? Yes. O'Mara?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes, by designation.
Siegel?
Yes, by designation.
Young? Yes. Grove?
No.
Anderson? No. Barker? Bernstein?
Designation no.
Cooper? Diorsi? Ecker?
Designation no.
Fink?
No.
Gleim? Jones? Reichard? Rossi? The bill passes.
Thank you. House Bill 630 is reported as committed from the House and Labor Industry Committee. I would now like to call up our final bill, House Bill 926, printers number 974, sponsored by Representative Kruger. I have a motion by Representative Green, second by Representative O'Meara. And Ryan, please explain the bill.
House Bill 926, printers number 974, the Healthcare Workplace Violence Prevention Act, requires the creation of violence prevention committees and plans in health facilities, provides protections against retaliation for reporting an incident of workplace violence, and provides powers to the Department of Labor and Industry for enforcement.
Thank you. I will now offer the maker of the bill to make a brief comments on her legislation.
Thank you so much to Chairman Dawkins, Chairman Grove, the members of the committee for considering House Bill 926 before the Labor and Industry Committee today, a bill that would create Pennsylvania's first Healthcare Workplace Violence Prevention Act. My colleague, Rep. Kozarowski, and I have introduced a version of this bill every session since 2019, but unfortunately it is more urgent than ever. On February 22nd, 2025, a tragic shooting unfolded at UPMC Memorial Hospital in York, PA, just 20 miles from here. A gunman entered the hospital's ICU armed with a semi-automatic pistol and zip ties. He took 4 hostages, including a doctor, a nurse, a custodian, and another staff member. During the incident, he opened fire, injuring 5 people. Sadly, West York Borough Police Officer Durante was killed in the line of duty. The attack ended when the gunman was fatally shot by police. While truly tragic, this is not the only recent incidence of workplace violence impacting a healthcare worker. In Delaware County last June, an EMT employed by Crozier Chester Medical Center in my district was brutally attacked by a patient who grabbed her hair, slammed her head onto the ambulance floor, and tried to strangle her. Her partner intervened to save her and also sustained injuries. She suffered a concussion, neck pain, right shoulder pain, and significant bruises. These are only 2 of the many stories that are before us today. I've been working with the nurses, paramedics, and other frontline healthcare workers at Crozier for years in an attempt to prevent incidents like these from happening in the first place. Violence occurring in the workplace is more prevalent in the healthcare industry than in any other industry. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, healthcare workers accounted for 73% of all non-fatal workplace injuries and illnesses due to violence in 2018 alone, which is the most recent year for which these statistics are available. 66% of members of the Pennsylvania Association of Nurses and Allied Professionals responded to a 2024 internal survey and said that they have personally experienced violence in their workplace. That is up from 50% in 2021. 72% of respondents said their hospital or facility does not do a good job of protecting them from workplace violence. Before this meeting, the voting members should have received a packet of other personal stories from frontline healthcare workers about horrific incidents they experienced on the ground here in Pennsylvania. You've also received letters of support from 3 different organizations that represent tens of thousands of nurses here in Pennsylvania, both union and non-union organizations. Thank you to PASNAP, SEIU Healthcare, and PSNA for weighing in on this bill. You may also have received 2 letters of opposition. So let me address some of the misinformation in those letters. First, there are currently no required standards or processes to address healthcare workplace violence in Pennsylvania. There are recommendations from OSHA for workplace violence prevention programs, but they are voluntary. Hospitals do and can choose to ignore them. This bill takes the essential recommendations from OSHA and enshrines them in state law. Second, this bill does not determine which actions or preventions a hospital should take. It simply requires healthcare facilities to give the frontline healthcare workers a seat at the table, analyze the workplace violence risks in that facility, and come up with a plan to prevent them. At least 10 other states have passed legislation requiring facilities to establish committees and produce prevention plans, including a brand new law signed by Ohio's governor in January to require hospitals to establish a security plan for preventing workplace violence and managing aggressive behaviors, along with a workplace violence incident reporting system. This is a bipartisan issue. Republicans and Democratic members have introduced various pieces of legislation on this topic dating back to 2011. We have a chance today to do something that has worked in other states. We have a chance to listen to what the nurses on the front line are asking us to do. We have the chance to take action to make sure the tragedy at UPMC Memorial Hospital in York doesn't happen again in another community. Please vote yes on House Bill 926 today.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I will now like to recognize Representative Grove, who will be offering Amendment A00210. James, please explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Amendment A00210, sponsored by Chairman Grove, expands the records that a healthcare facility is required to keep regarding a report of an incident of workplace violence to emails and internal communications. Additionally, it increases the retention requirement of records from 3 to 5 years.
Thank you. Representative Orsi makes the motion to adopt Amendment A00210, second by Representative Gleim. Chairman Grove, make remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment aligns with the governor's administration on policy on record retention, specifically around emails, which wasn't included in this original. Lately, we found out that the governor lost or deleted governor's office lost or deleted emails around a potential workplace violence, sexual harassment claim, and violation of their 5-year policy. This at least will put it in statute to make sure that doesn't at least occur if it happens in the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I would urge the members to oppose this amendment simply because it would increase the amount of information employers would require to retain and extend the period that they would have to keep the records, which what I've been hearing is also what my colleagues always tells me, it's putting additional burdens on businesses. So since I'm a pro-business Democrat, I'm going to urge members to vote no. Jonathan, please take the vote. Oh, too late.
Dawkins?
No.
Brennan? No. Donahue? No. Jarrell? No. Green? No. Haddock? No. Kincaid? No. Krajewski?
No, and all Democrats no.
Grove?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Barger?
Sorry, designation yes.
Bernstein?
Designation yes.
Cooper? Yes. Diorsi? Yes. Ecker?
Designation yes.
Fink? Yes. Gleim? Yes. Jones?
Thank you. They're going to be busy fighting frivolous lawsuits. Maybe they should. I'll say yes to stick with my chair.
Reichard?
Yes.
Rossi?
Yes.
The amendment fails.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the bill of Chairman Grove?
Thank you. Just a question for the prime sponsor. What in your legislation would have actually prevented the shooting at UPMC Memorial?
Mr. Chairman, the problem is that our facilities are not actually taking action ahead of time to prevent tragedies like what happened in York, when we have 72% of nurses saying they don't believe their employers are keeping them safe.
But what in your bill would prevent it specifically? Can you cite a section that would actually prevent that from happening?
The facility would have been required to bring frontline healthcare workers to the table to do a risk assessment and to put procedures in place. That did not happen in York, Mr. Chairman.
Actually, UPMC Memorial actually has one of these committees that operate.
I've spoken to providers who work in that facility, Mr. Chairman, who support this bill.
Well, they have what you're asking for, and it didn't impact it. You're saying if we pass this bill, it'll guarantee that won't happen.
I'm saying that we need to prevent future tragedies, Mr. Chairman, and
But
we
you
need
can't
to give
cite
the
anything in your
frontline
bill
healthcare
that
workers
actually
a
would
seat
prevent
at
it.
the table.
Nothing in this bill you've cited would prevent that from happening, correct?
So this, for a moment, I don't believe there's any bills that we ever pass in any committee that guarantees an absolute result on any front. So with that being said, I think we just, move on.
Thank you. And kind of that's my issue with the bill, the chairman's exact sentiment. We can talk about safety as much as we want. We can continue to add layers of safety protocol and reporting requirements and paperwork. It's not going to prevent what occurred. Specifically in that circumstance, if you would actually talk to the physicians that were there that day, they had no issue with the gentleman who ended up being the shooter. It was a horrible situation for him, and he snapped one day. They had plenty of communications with him. He stopped in multiple times throughout the 3 weeks after his fiance passed away at the hospital, and they thought they bonded with him. So there's nothing in this legislation that would have prevented that. And I'm probably a little upset that it's using, that tragedy is being used as a political stunt to pass legislation that we know would not have impacted that tragedy in my district. But it is what it is. I do know that they do follow OSHA there. We just had a meeting pushing a public sector OSHA bill that said it's for public safety. Obviously, it's not working because we're adding more layers of bureaucracy upon these entities. All this is going to be a reporting requirement afterwards, more paperwork, and at the end of the day, the hospital was doing the right thing. They had their safety, they had their risk assessments, they have armed security there. Did everything they possibly could. It was an unfortunate circumstance of a gentleman who snapped at the last second and caused injury. And the officer's name is Duarte. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think this bill is about more paperwork. This is about listening to your employees. And so often we see emergency rooms as a petri dish for problems that are come down the line. We have, maybe folks getting transferred in with a transfer agreement from a mental health institution that are transferring into our ERs, and maybe they're not getting enough information. Our frontline workers are seeing the repetitive things that are happening. This is an avenue for them to be heard. And I mean, we are always talking about the high costs of workers' compensation. Well, let's have processes in place to make sure that we protect the livelihoods of our nurses and our healthcare professionals. If as a person who saw these issues as a labor attorney for something like 15 years, it's a repetitive cycle of the same things happening to people over and over and over and over again. People lose their careers because we're not listening to our employees and we're not protecting our employees. And frankly, that's our job up here. So I support this bill. I'm happy it's being brought up. I'm happy that we're going to listen to our frontline employees and try and protect their livelihoods. And frankly, it's a good business decision because we're having a hard time finding healthcare professionals. We can't afford to be losing these people. We can, and if the cost of workers' comp is really a concern for you, then let's try and do something to help these people from getting hurt. And this is a great bill. I thank the gentlelady from Delaware County for bringing this up, and I urge a yes vote.
Thank you. Representative DeWarsey.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll be quick here. Two chief issues with this bill. Certainly we're all in unison against workplace violence, but it's challenging for me to understand how a mandate that would require the formation of a committee would stop or even deter workplace violence in furtherance of Rep. Grove's point. And the second is with the subpoena and inspection powers to enter and enforce a facility in lieu of the provisions of this bill. I see that the Department of Labor and Industry, of course, is involved, and then the Office of the General Counsel, which it's my understanding that the Office of the General Counsel serves at the pleasure of the governor. So this kind of consolidation of power to inspect and to subpoena is problematic for me, and I just wanted to voice those two reasons for my opposition to this bill. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Representative Donahue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Kruger, for bringing this legislation along with my colleague from Scranton, Representative Kozarowski. I have two hospitals that are in my district, and over the last 6 weeks, there's been 7 separate security incidences at those hospitals, and I have taken a lot of calls from nurses and hospital workers in my district asking why we don't mandate security measures at the front doors, such as metal detectors, security guards at our hospitals. So I don't have a good answer to that, and I think that is a conversation we should have, but I do think that this is a step in the right direction because it's also acknowledging that not every hospital situation is the same. So it's giving each hospital their ability to create their own committee and to look at their security on an individual basis. And I will be fully supportive of this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You want to go again? No. Chairman Grove? All right. Well, seeing no more of the members want to be recognized, I'd like to just take the moment to thank the prime sponsor for reintroducing this very important piece of legislation. And I'd like to add a few things. It's always rich to hear these perspectives from a different viewpoint when you sit in the majority chair versus the minority chair. Because it's not that long ago that we have introduced a ton of bills that do exactly what you are trying to do now that we sometimes argued about. And let me give you an example of what I mean. I'm hearing that we should do nothing because there's nothing going to be an absolute guarantee that safety or, incident may not occur. And, my co-chair mentioned using this particular case as almost a political stunt. It's quite rich. We've had a ton of legislation passed in this building. I've been around here since 2014. And I'm going to use a phrase here called mandatory minimums. Maybe you've heard of them. How many bills have we drafted based on crimes that would have never prevented a new crime based on that statute? But I have never heard anyone from the other side make that argument that they're making today against this particular bill. If we have the ability to do anything to potentially prevent an individual from becoming harmed, we as legislators should try our hardest to advance such legislation. We should not sit here idle and do nothing because there's no guarantee that what we do will have a successful outcome. And that's what I've been hearing. And again, we have to stay consistent on our message if we are being sincere. And what I say to our members, this is a start for us to start putting our actual, what they say, put your money where your mouth is. If you believe in the safety of our communities, you should do everything in your power to ensure that we keep our healthcare folks safe and not use any tragedy as a means to take a cheap shot against the other side, which I do not believe is occurring today. And I want to thank you again for bringing this legislation. I'll ask Jonathan to take the roll.
Dawkins?
Yes.
Brennan? Yes. Donahue? Yes. Jarrell? Yes. Green? Yes. Haddock? Yes. Kincaid? Yes. Krajewski?
Yes.
Mirsky?
Yes by designation.
Miller? Yes. O'Mara? Yes. Scott?
Yes by designation.
Siegel?
Yes by designation.
Young?
Yes by designation.
Grove?
No.
Anderson? Yes. Barger?
Designation, no.
Bernstein?
Designation, no.
Cooper? No. Diorsi? No. Ecker?
Designation, no.
Fink? No. Gleim? No. Jones? No. Reichard? No. Rossi? No. The bill passes.
Thank you. House Bill 926 is reported as committed from the House and Labor Industry Committee. And before we adjourn, just know the committee will be in Pittsburgh from April 14th to 16th. We're going to have a few tours in the Pittsburgh region. Look out your email for the logistics to the committee, and we hope we'll see you all there. But there's no other business, and now adjourn this meeting.